You think you know the person sleeping next to you. You think it could never happen to you. I thought so too, right up until I saw my husband toasting his new life. A life funded by my destruction. And the sickest irony, I was the one paying for that exact glass of champagne. You will not believe what happens next. My name is Alara Vance. I'm 34 years old, and I am a senior data analyst at Veridata Solutions. My job is to find patterns in chaos, to look at millions of scattered data points and find the one, simple, actionable truth. On this Tuesday afternoon, I was standing at the check-in desk of the Alistair, the most expensive hotel in Austin, and the only truth I could find was that I was about to be humiliated. The air in the lobby smelled like old money and white lilies, thick and suffocating. The click of the receptionist's keyboard was abnormally loud in the hushed space. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vance," the young man said, his voice dripping with practiced politeness. "This card has been declined." Heat flooded my face. "That's impossible. Can you please try it again? It's for the deposit. The party for Marcus Thorne." He smiled, a tight, insincere expression. Of course. I was trying to book the terrace ballroom for my husband's 40th birthday, a surprise party. The irony was acidic in my throat. Marcus was supposedly shattered. His biotech startup, Evogen, had imploded just 6 months ago, taking every cent of our savings with it. We were in financial freefall. We were behind on our mortgage. I was paying for this deposit, this extravagant gesture of support, with my last line of credit, a card I'd kept hidden just for emergencies. And this, I had convinced myself, was an emergency of morale, something to pull him out of the depression he'd been swimming in. While the receptionist tapped his keys again, my gaze drifted past him, through the arched entryway into the hotel's legendary bar. It was dark, paneled in mahogany, with amber light catching the tops of expensive bottles. My breath hitched. It was him, my husband. Marcus Thorne was sitting at a corner banquette. He was not wearing the faded gray sweatpants and 3-day-old t-shirt I'd left him in this morning. He was wearing a bespoke suit, a deep charcoal wool that fit his shoulders in a way none of his work clothes ever had. It was a suit I had never seen. He was laughing. A full, genuine laugh that I hadn't heard in months. It wasn't the broken, hollow sound he gave me at home. He raised a champagne flute. The bubbles caught the light. It wasn't beer, his supposed only solace. It was Dom Perignon. I knew the shape of the bottle, and he wasn't alone. Across from him sat a woman with hair the color of a new penny, a fiery, impossible red. She was stunning, draped in a silk dress the color of envy. They clinked glasses. And then, Marcus leaned across the small table, cupped her face in his hand, and kissed her. It wasn't a friendly kiss. It wasn't a peck. It was slow and deep and proprietary. It was a kiss of shared secrets and total intimacy. The blood drained from my head, leaving a ringing sound in my ears. The receptionist was saying something about insufficient funds, but his voice was a long way away. I knew that woman. My mind, the analytical engine I relied on, frantically sorted through files. The red hair, the name, Serafina Reyes. This was Serafina, the Viper. The former partner Marcus claimed had double-crossed him, liquidated Evogen's assets, and vanished with the investment capital, leaving him to face the fallout and the creditors. The woman who had, according to him, destroyed our lives. She hadn't vanished. She was 10 yards away, drinking our future. My body moved on its own. I stumbled back, pressing myself against the cold marble of a massive support pillar, out of their sight line. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely function. My purse slipped, and I fumbled for my phone. The ambient sound of the bar washed over me, the clink of ice, the low murmur of conversations, and then, clear as a bell, I heard Marcus's voice. He was toasting her again. "To us, baby," he said, his voice rich and triumphant, selling the dream. They never knew what hit them. They laughed together. My husband and his betrayer. My analyst's mind took over where the wife's heart had just shattered. I raised my phone. My shaking thumb found the camera icon. I zoomed in. The focus was blurry, then sharp. Marcus, smiling. Serafina, radiant. The bottle of champagne. The date and timestamp glowing in the corner of my screen. I pressed the button. The quiet digital click was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. The receptionist called my name again, this time with a sharp edge of annoyance. Ms. Vance. I looked at the image on my screen. The proof. The data point that changed everything. The shock didn't fade. It crystallized. It turned into something hard and cold and perfectly clear. The collapse wasn't a failure. The betrayal wasn't a betrayal. It was a plan. And I was the one left to pay for the damages. I don't remember the drive back to our suburban, over-mortgaged house. It's a 35-minute route I've driven thousands of times, but that evening, I was a ghost operating a machine. The setting sun was a painful orange smear across the windshield. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my insides were vibrating with a frequency so high it was silent. The photo on my phone was a hot, heavy secret in my pocket. I parked in the driveway, next to the rust bucket sedan Marcus had been driving ever since he lost his luxury car with the company. The lawn needed mowing. A late payment notice was peeking out of the mailbox. Everything looked exactly as I had left it, but it was all a stage set. A lie. I walked in the front door. The house was quiet, smelling faintly of stale coffee and stress. Alara, that you. Marcus was already home. He shuffled out of the kitchen, and the transformation was so complete it was almost brilliant. The bespoke suit was gone, replaced by the ratty gray sweatpants and the stretched-out college t-shirt. His hair was messy, his face drawn and shadowed with a carefully cultivated stubble. He looked exactly like the man I'd been trying to save, exhausted, depressed, and utterly defeated. He pulled me into a hug before I could even set my purse down. His arms felt like cage bars. I went rigid, my body recoiling before my mind could order it to act normal. God, what a day. He sighed, burying his face in my hair. I could smell the faint, expensive trace of Serafina's perfume under his own scent. Total waste. The lawyers are useless. Just hours of circles. I pulled back, forcing my lips into the shape of a supportive smile. No luck tracking Serafina. His face darkened. A performance of righteous anger. Nothing. It's like she evaporated. They're talking about international jurisdiction, how expensive it'll be to even try and claw back our money. He ran his hands through his hair. Our money, Alara, she just took it all. He was good. He was a phenomenal actor. The man I saw at the Alistair, the one toasting his success, was gone. In his place was the victim. You look tired, I said. My voice sounded thin, but he didn't notice. Let me get you some water. As I walked to the kitchen, my stomach twisted into a tight, acid-filled knot. The disgust was so potent I was afraid I would be sick on the tile. I grabbed a glass, my hand shaking just enough to rattle the ice cubes. I watched him sink onto the sofa, the picture of a broken man. I am a data analyst. My brain finds patterns. It discards corrupted data. As I looked at him, he was no longer my husband. He was a faulty data set. Every sigh was a lie. Every weary blink was a misdirection. His complaint about the lawyers was a fabrication. His anger at Serafina was a collaborative joke. I was logging every micro-expression, every false note. I handed him the water. Our fingers brushed. I had to fight the urge to snatch my hand back as if I'd touched something diseased. Just then, my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up Juliet. I sighed, and for a moment, the exhaustion was real. My younger sister, 25 years old and a beautiful, swirling tornado of impulse and bad decisions. I answered, Hey, Jules, not a great time. Ilara, I know, she started, her voice already thick with tears. But I'm stranded. My transmission it just died. On the highway. The tow truck driver said it's going to be at least $1,500, and I don't get paid until next week, and my rent. I closed my eyes. This was the rhythm of our lives. Juliet would fall, and I, Alara, would catch her. I was the reliable one, the senior analyst, the one who always had a handle on things. But as she cried, a new, cold calculation slotted into place. I had been funneling money to Juliet for months, scraping it from my own paycheck, believing I was the only one keeping our extended family afloat while Marcus fought to get us back on our feet. Now, I saw it clearly. The reason I was so stretched thin, the reason my credit cards were maxed out, wasn't just because of the failure of Evogen. It was because Marcus had been systematically draining our joint accounts to fund his new life. My money wasn't just supporting me and my broken husband. It was paying for Dom Perignon. It was paying for a bespoke suit. It was paying for his escape. "Jules," I said, my voice suddenly firm, cutting off her sobs. "I can't. Not right now." The silence on the other end was stunned. "But, Ilara, I'm stuck. I'll see what I can do." I lied. It was the first truly calculated lie I had ever told my sister. "I have to go." I hung up before she could protest. A new, hard resolve was setting in my chest, pushing out the grief. The grief could come later. Now was for analysis. That night, I lay in our bed, perfectly still. I feigned sleep as Marcus tossed and turned beside me, sighing heavily in his troubled slumber. I could feel the heat radiating off his body, the familiar rhythm of his breathing. It was the breathing of a stranger, a predator. He wasn't just a cheater, an affair I could have processed. This was a long con. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had defrauded me. He had strategically isolated me, weaponized my empathy, and turned me into the financial scapegoat for his grand escape. He was planning to leave me buried in the rubble of our joint debt, holding the bag for his spectacular failure while he and Serafina drank champagne. I stared into the darkness, my eyes wide open. The analyst in me was awake. He thought he was the smart one. He thought he had sold the dream. But he had made one critical error. He had underestimated the woman sleeping next to him. He thought I was just a wife. He forgot I was a data analyst, and I was about to analyze his entire world to dust. The front door clicked shut at 8:03 a.m. I watched through the slats of the blinds as Marcus's car, the symbol of his supposed failure, rattled down our quiet street. He was off to fight the good fight, another imaginary meeting with creditors or lawyers. I waited, counting the seconds until his car was out of sight. Then I moved. I walked into my home office, a room that had once been my sanctuary. I locked the door, sat at my triple monitor setup, and took a sip of scalding hot coffee. The emotional paralysis of the night before was gone, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus. The wife was offline. The analyst was in. My position at Veridata grants me access to data aggregation tools that make Google look like a children's library. I have subscriptions to enterprise-level databases that can cross-reference global corporate filings, financial data, and personal records in seconds. My job is to find the signal in the noise. And Marcus had just become the loudest noise in my life. I started with the variable I knew Serafina Reyes. According to Marcus, she was a ghost, vanished with their startup capital. I typed her name into the system. She was not a ghost. She was a CEO. The registration was filed in Delaware 6 months ago, almost to the day that Evogen allegedly imploded. Serafina Reyes was listed as the sole director and CEO of a corporation called Ethelred Holdings. Ethelred, a self-consciously archaic name. Ethelred the Unready. How fitting. A company filed in Delaware is designed to be a black box. But I wasn't interested in the box. I was interested in what it had acquired. I ran a deep dive on Evogen's assets. Marcus's story was that the company was worthless, that the intellectual property was rendered obsolete, and that the investors had been forced to write it all off as a catastrophic loss. The database told a different story. Evogen hadn't collapsed. It had been acquired. The entire portfolio of biotech patents, the core of Marcus's genius, had been sold in a private sealed transaction. The buyer, Ethelred Holdings. The price, $30 million. I stared at the number on the screen. $30 million. While I was canceling streaming services to save $20 a month. While I was lying awake at night trying to figure out how to avoid foreclosure on our house. While he was wearing his depression sweatpants and drinking cheap beer, the rage was a physical thing, a cold pressure behind my eyes. I pushed it down. Data first, emotion later. Where does $30 million go? It flows. I followed the transaction IDs. Ethelred Delaware had paid Evogen Texas, and then the assets had been immediately transferred. The money itself had been wired, within 48 hours, from Ethelred Delaware to another identically named entity. Ethelred Holdings, Cayman Islands, a financial firewall, untraceable, anonymous, a dead end, almost. Marcus was smart, but he was also lazy, and he was arrogant. He believed I was the dutiful, slightly naive wife, not the analyst who had built predictive models complex enough to map global supply chains. He thought his digital life was locked tight. He maintained a private cloud server. He'd told me it was for hypersensitive IP, back when Evogen was still his supposed passion project. After the collapse, he said he couldn't even look at it, that it was all legally compromised. I navigated to the login portal. I tried the obvious passwords. Our anniversary, his birthday, the dog's name, access denied, access denied. I stopped. I closed my eyes and pictured him. Not the loving husband, but the man in the charcoal suit. Arrogant, predictable. He wouldn't use a password that honored us. He would use one that honored him, but disguised as sentiment. I thought back, years ago, to the dog he'd had when we first met, a scruffy terrier named Buster. Marcus had been obsessed with that dog, long before it died. He'd made a huge deal of its birthday, laughing about how absurd it was. May 11th. I typed in the password Buster May 11. Access granted. The server was meticulous. It wasn't a digital graveyard, it was an active file cabinet. Folders labeled finance, logistics, personal. I clicked on personal. Inside, a folder labeled travel. My blood went cold. I clicked it. Passport scans. The first was Serafina Reyes, a valid current U.S. passport. The second was Marcus Thorne, my husband. The third was also Marcus. The photo was him, but he was clean-shaven, his hair parted on the other side. The name was not Marcus Thorne. The name was Michael Stavros. It was a clean passport, issued by a different country. A second, illegal identity. I felt the room tilt. This wasn't just a financial escape. This was a complete erasure. There was one more file in the folder, a PDF document. The file name was Contingency, Final. I opened it. It was a flight itinerary for 2 passengers, Serafina Reyes and Michael Stavros. 2 first-class, one-way tickets from Austin to Zurich, connecting through Dubai. The date of departure was the Saturday after his birthday. The party. The stupid, expensive, desperate party I was trying to throw for him. It wasn't a celebration. It was his grand finale, his farewell performance. He was planning to let me throw him the party, soak up the sympathy and adoration of all our friends and family, and then, less than 24 hours later, he would step onto a plane with his mistress and $30 million, leaving Marcus Thorne and me to be buried by the debt. I walked into the glass atrium of Veridata Solutions at 9 a.m., my employee badge clicking against my jacket. My face was a carefully constructed mask of neutral professionalism. I looked like I was coming in for a standard day of meetings and data modeling. Inside, my mind was a high-speed processor, running calculations on international law, financial fraud, and the precise timeline of my husband's escape. I had the $30 million and a fake identity. I now needed the where, and for that, I needed an ally. My team is competent, but I needed more than competence. I needed brilliance, and I needed absolute loyalty. My eyes scanned the open plan floor and landed on Chloe. Chloe is 26, with purple streaks in her hair, and she's the most gifted data miner I have ever met. I hired her straight out of college, recognizing a mind that moved as fast as my own. She sees me as her mentor, the woman who gave her a shot. I see her as a digital pit bull. Crucially, Chloe had met Marcus twice at company functions, and both times she had come to me afterward and said, "I don't trust his vibe. Ilara, he talks to you like you're his assistant, not his wife." I walked to her workstation. "Chloe, conference room 3. Now." Her head snapped up from her screen. "Everything okay?" "Bring your personal laptop," I said, my voice low. "Not the company one." The gravity in my tone stopped any further questions. She just nodded, grabbed her bag, and followed me. I shut the glass door and hit the switch to frost the windows, sealing us in a private cube. "Okay, you're scaring me," she said, booting up her machine. "What I am about to tell you does not leave this room," I began, my voice perfectly level. "It involves Marcus." Her posture changed. She leaned in. I had to be careful. I couldn't tell her about the affair or the lies about our mortgage. That was messy, emotional. I needed her to see this as a data problem, a corporate threat. "I have uncovered a significant multi-million-dollar money laundering scheme," I said, "and I believe Marcus is at the center of it." Chloe's eyes widened, but she didn't look shocked. She looked validated. "I knew it. That guy was always too slick. What's the deal?" "He's not just a failed startup founder. Evogen wasn't a failure. It was a shell game. He liquidated the IP for $30 million and funneled it offshore." I paused, letting the number land. "Here's the problem for us. You remember when he did that security consulting gig for Veridata last year?" She nodded. "The one he charged us $50,000 for?" "The same. I have reason to believe he used his access to our internal systems to facilitate parts of this scheme, to cover his tracks, perhaps to use our servers as a dead end. If that's true, Veridata is exposed. Our data integrity is compromised, and if this blows up, our reputation is mud." That was the hook. It wasn't just my marriage, it was our company. Chloe's expression turned to ice. "That bastard. He put us at risk." "He did," I said, "and I am going to find every cent he stole, and I am going to protect this firm, but I can't do it officially. I need you. Your skills, the ones that are not on your employment contract." I slid a piece of paper across the table. On it were 2 names, Ethelred Holdings and Serafina Reyes. Ethelred is the Delaware Shell Corporation that bought the assets. It has an offshore counterpart in the Caymans. Serafina Reyes is his partner, the CEO of Ethelred. I need you to find everything. I need a complete financial footprint, bank accounts, wire transfers, but most importantly, I need hard assets, real estate, vehicles, properties. They're going to try and hide the money. They're going to buy things. I want to know what, and I want to know where. Chloe cracked her knuckles, a small smile playing on her lips. "This is better than the telecom project. So, you want me to be your digital ghost?" "I want you to be my digital god," I replied. "Find me the money, Chloe. Consider it found." As soon as Chloe left to begin her hunt, I walked out of the building. I went to a gas station 4 blocks away and bought a $12 burner phone with cash. I stood on the concrete sidewalk, the smell of gasoline in the air, and dialed a number I had memorized. The voice that answered was polished and sharp. "Harding Legal." "I need an emergency appointment with Mrs. Harding." The receptionist sounded bored. "Mrs. Harding's consultation calendar is booked for the next 6 months. Ma'am, please tell her I have digital and photographic evidence of a $30 million fraudulent asset transfer. a conspiracy to defraud creditors, and a forged passport for the purposes of fleeing the country. There was a click, and I was on hold for exactly 15 seconds. A new voice came on the line. It was deep, precise, and carried the weight of 1,000 courtroom victories. "This is Evelyn Harding. You have 30 seconds to convince me." 2 hours later, I was sitting in her top-floor office, which overlooked the entire Austin skyline. Mrs. Harding was a woman in her 60s, dressed in a severe black suit, with diamonds in her ears that looked like captured ice. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I laid out my case as I would a data report. I presented the timeline, the photo from the Alistair, the corporate filings from Delaware, the $30 million sale price, the flight itinerary to Zurich, and last, I placed the printout of the Michael Stavros passport on her gleaming mahogany desk. She examined each document in silence. Her expression was unreadable. When she finished, she steepled her fingers, tapped them lightly against her lips, and looked at me. "Men like your husband," she said, her voice a low purr, "believe they are the smartest people in every room. They believe rules are for the little people they step on." She picked up the hotel photograph of Marcus toasting Serafina. "He's sloppy and arrogant. That is a devastating combination." She pushed the documents back toward me into a neat pile. A slow, thin smile spread across her face, a smile that made my blood run cold with relief. "Mrs. Vance," she said, "this isn't a simple divorce. This is a targeted demolition. We will not just file for dissolution. We will file a civil fraud suit, an injunction to freeze every known asset, and we will alert the district attorney's office to the criminal charges." She stood and walked to the window. "You did the hard part. Now, I get to do the fun part. My dear girl, we are not just going to divorce him. We are going to leave him with nothing but the suit he's wearing, and if we're lucky, we'll take that too." Chloe's message came through on a secure app 24 hours later. It was just a string of text. "Asset secured, 401 Brazos, Penthouse B, purchased 3 months ago, cash, via Ethelred, title registered to S, Reyes and M, Stavros, Michael Stavros, the fake passport name, my husband's ghost identity. My blood felt thick and slow, like sludge, a penthouse, downtown, while he was at home with me, complaining that we couldn't afford to get the air conditioning fixed. I told Marcus I was going to visit my sister. A lie to cover a lie. The drive downtown was a descent into his real life. I left my world of unpaid bills and dying lawns and entered his a landscape of gleaming steel and glass towers that pierced the Austin sky. 401 Brazos was one of the new ones, a monument to tech money and brutalist architecture. I parked my sensible sedan across the street, in a garage that cost $20 for the first hour, and I waited. I sat there for 4 hours. The sun beat on the windshield, turning the car into a sauna. I didn't notice. I was watching the polished black doors of the lobby, my eyes dry, my focus absolute. I felt like a sniper, waiting for a target to appear in the crosshairs. At 6:15, a black, top-of-the-line Audi pulled into the private drive. He got out of the driver's side. Marcus. But not my Marcus. Not the broken, depressed man in the gray sweatpants. This was the man from the Alistair. He wore a crisp blue shirt, no tie, and dark slacks that cost more than my monthly car payment. He looked vital. He looked powerful. He looked happy. Serafina emerged from the passenger side. She was laughing, her red hair catching the evening light. She looped her arm through his. He kissed her temple. They walked into the building, their movements synchronized, a perfect, polished unit. They looked like a power couple featured in a magazine. I sat there, frozen, long after the black doors had closed behind them. The realization was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. This was not a tawdry affair. This was not a fling he was hiding. This was his life. The house in the suburbs, the overdue mortgage, the shared history. Me, that was the affair. That was the side piece. This, the penthouse bought with my stolen future. The beautiful redhead, the successful man he truly was. This was his reality. He wasn't commuting to meetings with creditors. He was commuting from his real life with his real partner to his fake life with his victim. The data analyst's cold detachment cracked, and for a moment, the wife's agony flooded in. It was so profound, so complete, I almost choked on it. Then, just as quickly, the rage returned, cold and structural, building a new kind of support inside me. I went home. I played the part. I made dinner for when Marcus texted, saying he was stuck in a meeting. Don't wait up. I responded, "Okay, honey, be safe." The next morning, I was back, parked in the same spot. I knew her car. I knew his schedule. He left at 8, in his old clunker, to go perform his role as the failed husband. She left at 10, in the Audi. I followed her. This was the part of data analysis they don't teach you, the human element, the surveillance. I stayed 3 cars back, my baseball cap pulled low. She was living the life he had stolen from me. She went to a high-end spin class. She picked up dry cleaning. She met a friend for coffee, laughing and touching her throat as she talked. Then, she went shopping. Not just any shopping. She went to the most exclusive, appointment-only jeweler in the city, the kind of place with a security guard at a locked door. I parked and watched from across the street. My phone's camera zoomed in as far as it would go, the lens pressed against the window. I watched her through the plate glass window. She was seated on a velvet chair, sipping champagne. A man in a perfect suit was showing her trays of jewels. She waved a dismissive hand at a pair of earrings. They talked. He nodded, went to a back safe, and returned holding a single, velvet-lined box. He opened it. Even from across the street. I knew it. My heart stopped. I mean, it literally stopped beating for a second. It was a necklace, an antique platinum chain, intricate and delicate, with a 3-carat, pear-shaped diamond drop surrounded by a halo of smaller, older stones. Serafina lifted it. She turned to the mirror, holding it against her throat, the same spot she had touched at the coffee shop. She smiled. My vision went white at the edges. That was my grandmother's necklace. It was the only thing of real value my family had. It was meant to be mine. It was mine, kept in our home safe. Until last year. Last year, we had a break-in. I'd come home from work to find the back door jimmied and our bedroom tossed. Marcus had been devastated. He had held me while I cried, reporting to the police that the only thing taken was my grandmother's necklace. He had filed the insurance claim. He had mourned with me over the loss of the one irreplaceable thing. The burglary was a lie. He had staged it. He had stolen my grandmother's history from our safe and given it to his mistress, presumably to be reset or sold. And here she was, admiring it, deciding if it suited her. The cold, analytical fury I had been nursing for days exploded. It became a white-hot, singular, burning fire. This was not about $30 million anymore. This was not about a house or a car or even a fake passport. He had taken the last physical piece of my grandmother from me and had draped it around the neck of the woman he was replacing me with. This was not fraud. This was desecration, and he was going to pay for it. The photograph of Serafina at the jeweler's, her head tilted as she admired my grandmother's necklace, was a declaration of war. Digital evidence, the $30 million, the fake passport that was for Mrs. Harding. That was for the courts. This was for me. The penthouse was where he kept his real life. The digital evidence on his cloud server was sloppy. The real data, the unvarnished truth, would be there. And so would my necklace. I am an analyst. I analyze patterns. I spent the next 3 days parked in the same sweltering garage, living on protein bars and black coffee, mapping their lives. Their behavior was a simple, predictable loop. They were arrogant. And arrogance breeds routine. Every Wednesday night at exactly 7:30, they left. They went to a restaurant called Cyclo, stayed for approximately 2 hours, and returned. That was my window. This Wednesday at 7:35. I sat in the fire stairwell on the 12th floor of their building. I pulled out my burner phone. I dialed the concierge. "Hi," I said, pitching my voice high, forcing a frantic, assistant-like urgency into my tone. "This is April, Serafina Reyes's assistant, in Penthouse B. I'm so sorry. She just called me in a complete panic. She's on her way to dinner, but she thinks she smelled gas when she was leaving. A strong smell of natural gas. She needs someone to go up and check it immediately." There was a choked sound on the other end. "Gas in the penthouse. Yes, she was very clear. Please, you need to send maintenance right away." Yes, of course. Miss, right away." I hung up. I had created the perfect diversion. Building staff would be distracted. Security protocols focused on a non-existent leak. I waited, counting the seconds. I heard the ding of the main elevator, then panicked, muffled voices as the concierge and a maintenance man rushed past my hiding spot. I gave them 2 full minutes. Then I moved. I ran up the remaining flights to the penthouse floor. The hallway was silent, the air still. I approached the massive dark wood door of Penthouse B. I'd spent $200 on an RFID keycard cloner. Yesterday. I had accidentally bumped into Serafina in the lobby as she returned from her spin class. My purse had grazed hers for half a second. It was all I needed. I had tested the cloned card on the secure doors at my own office. It worked perfectly. I held the blank white card to the reader. The light flashed green. There was a heavy, oiled click. I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The door closed behind me with the heavy, soundless thud of insulated wealth. The apartment was dark. The only light was the glittering panorama of the Austin skyline, pouring in through 20-foot-tall windows. It was stunning, and it smelled of her. That perfume. It was everywhere, thick and floral, an invasive species. I didn't turn on a single light. I used the small flashlight app on my phone, keeping the beam low. I knew where I was going. Marcus always had to have a study, a place for his important work. I found it. Dark mahogany walls, a desk the size of my car, and a wall of books. I scanned the titles. He was so predictable. I found the spine of the Count of Monte Cristo and pulled. The false panel of books swung open, revealing a digital wall safe. My heart was hammering against my ribs, the sound loud in the quiet room. A 6-digit code. My mind raced. Not our anniversary, not his birthday. It had to be his real birthday, the day his new life began. The day the money cleared, I pulled up the Evogen acquisition file on my phone. The date of the $30 million wire transfer. I typed it in. The safe beeped softly and the lock disengaged. I aimed the light inside. My breath caught in my throat. There it was, resting on a bed of black velvet, gleaming like a teardrop of captured light. My grandmother's necklace. I grabbed it, my fingers closing around the cold, familiar platinum. It was a piece of my own soul. Rescued. Beneath it were 4 external hard drives. This was the core of the data, the real ledgers, the accounts the Cayman Islands shell company fed into, the private communications. I pulled a small, high-speed drive cloner from my pocket and plugged in the first one. The small screen lit up, showing the data transfer. It was slow, too slow. Every second was an agony. The ding of a distant elevator made me jump, my skin prickling. While the first drive copied, my light skimmed over the safe's other contents. Tucked in the back was a pale blue folder. Serafina's name was on the tab, written in Marcus's sharp, arrogant handwriting. I opened it. It wasn't financial data. It was a medical report from an exclusive, high-risk obstetrician. I scanned the lines, the medical jargon blurring, and then I saw the paper-clipped image, a sonogram. I looked for the date, The summary at the bottom: Patient Serafina Reyes. Estimated gestation: 12 weeks, 3 months. A cold, sick understanding washed over me. The plan to flee to Zurich wasn't just a retirement. It wasn't just an escape. It was a replacement. He was cashing out our shared past to fund a new family. He was going to leave me in a mortgaged-to-hell house, buried in debt, while he started over. A new father, a new man, with a new baby. The baby I had discussed with him, the one he'd said we couldn't afford to even think about right now because of the financial ruin Serafina had caused. The drive cloner beeped. The first one was done. My hands were shaking, but not with fear, with a rage so pure it was almost silent. I swapped to the second drive, then the third, then the fourth. I put the hard drives back, exactly as they had been. I replaced the blue folder, closing the flap. I closed the heavy safe door and spun the lock. I pushed the book panel back into place. I wiped every surface I had touched. I backed out of the study, out of the penthouse, and pulled the door shut until I heard the lock engage. I took the stairs down, my legs steady. As I crossed the lobby, the concierge and the maintenance man were back at the main desk. "False alarm," the maintenance man was saying, shrugging. "Smelled fine to me, these rich women. I swear, probably just their expensive perfume." I pushed through the glass doors and into the humid night air, my fist clenched in my pocket. The diamonds of my grandmother's necklace felt sharp against my palm, like teeth. The conference room at Veridata had become our war room. Chloe and I had the cloned data from the penthouse drives plugged into a high-speed forensic rig, bypassing all of Veridata's internal servers. This was off the grid. The data was overwhelming. It wasn't just financial ledgers. It was a complete archive of the conspiracy. Emails, text logs, encrypted messages. It was Marcus's entire shadow life, digitized and indexed. "Ilara, I'm seeing a name here I don't recognize," Chloe said, squinting at her screen. "It's all in the early R&D comms for Evogen, a Dr. Eris Thorne. He's CC'd on every technical breakdown, every formula, every piece of source code. And then, 6 months before the collapse, he just vanishes from the chain. Eris Thorne. The name felt like a cold echo from a life I thought I knew. "That's Marcus's brother," I said, my voice quiet. Marcus never spoke of him. Eris was the family ghost, the brilliant but troubled older brother. The story Marcus told was vague. Aris was unstable, a recluse, a genius who couldn't handle the real world, a burnout. "Well," Chloe said, her fingers flying across the keyboard, "this burnout is the person who wrote the Evogen code, all of it. Marcus is just a salesman. This guy is the architect." She pulled up the original patent filings. Eris Thorne was the primary inventor on all of them. Then she pulled up the IP transfer agreement, where Eris signed away his rights to the Evogen Corporation for the sum of $1. "It's all here," Chloe said, disgusted. Marcus founded Evogen using his brother's brain, and then, nothing. I had to find him. If Eris was the true source of the $30 million, he was a victim, just like me. My search tools, which I had used to find Serafina, now located Eris. He wasn't in a nice condo. He wasn't in a research lab. He was in a rundown, weekly rate apartment complex on the other side of the highway, a place that smelled of stale grease and desperation. I knocked on the peeling paint of his door. It took 3 tries before a voice from inside, thin and reedy, called out, "Go away. I'm not interested." "Eris, my name is Ilara Vance. I'm Marcus's wife." The chain rattled. The door opened a few inches. A pair of terrified, intelligent eyes peered out at me. He looked like a haunted version of my husband, thinner, paler, with a frantic energy vibrating under his skin. "Marcus's wife," he whispered, as if I were an apparition. "May I come in? It's about Evogen. It's about what Marcus did to you." He let the door swing open. The tiny apartment was immaculate but bare, save for 2 massive whiteboards on wheels, both covered from edge to edge in complex biotechnical formulas. He was still working. "What about Marcus?" he said, clutching the collar of a frayed bathrobe. "He told you Evogen failed," I said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. Eris flinched. It didn't work. The data was flawed. It was my fault. I missed a variable." He was reciting a script, one that had been drilled into him. "He told you the company was bankrupt," I continued, "that the creditors were seizing everything, that he needed you to sign the IP release forms to protect you from liability." He nodded, his eyes wide with confusion. "Yes, he was protecting me. He was always the strong one, the one who handled things. And he gave you money," I said, the final piece clicking into place. "A small humanitarian payment to help you land on your feet." He gave me $10,000, Eris whispered, his face crumpling with a familiar, misplaced gratitude. "He said it was all he could spare from your joint savings, that you were so generous." My blood turned to ice. My $10,000. From the account I had been desperately trying to keep afloat, Marcus hadn't just paid off his brother, he had used my money as the final insult, framing it as an act of my own charity. "Eris," I said, my voice hard, "you are the genius behind Evogen, not Marcus. Your data wasn't flawed. Your work was a masterpiece." "What are you talking about?" I took the printout from my bag, the one Mrs. Harding now had a copy of. The acquisition record. Evogen did not fail. Eris, Marcus and his partner, Serafina Reyes, sold it 6 months ago to a shell corporation called Ethelred Holdings. Your work. They sold it for $30 million. He took the paper from my hand. He stared at the number. He traced the lines of the text with a shaking finger. He looked from the paper to my face, then back to the paper. He wasn't just processing the information. He was rebuilding his entire reality. 30 million. His voice was a dry croak. He didn't just steal from me. Eris. He stole from you. He built his entire fortune on your mind, and then he threw you away and left me to pay his debts. The hollow-eyed confusion in his face began to change. The despair didn't vanish, but something new and terrible began to burn underneath it. It was the righteous, focused rage of a man who has just realized his entire life was a lie. He told me to destroy my research," Eris whispered, his voice trembling. "He said it was a legal liability, that it was toxic." He walked, not to his whiteboards, but to a small, locked footlocker under his cot. He opened it. Inside, packed in anti-static bags, were hard drives, notebooks, and a digital audio recorder. "I never destroy my data," he said, his voice no longer weak. It was cold. "I have the original code. I have the server logs. I have recordings of my meetings with him, where he told me it was all worthless." He looked up at me, his eyes now as sharp as my own. "He stole my life, Alara. He let me believe I was a failure." I nodded, extending my hand. "He did. And we are going to take it back." He took my hand. The alliance was formed. The Data Queen, the Computer Witch, and the betrayed genius. Marcus didn't stand a chance. The first call I made wasn't to Mrs. Harding or Chloe. It was back to the Alistair. My voice, when I spoke to the events coordinator, was unrecognizable. It was bright, steady, and vibrating with the synthetic cheer of a wife on a mission of love. "Hello, this is Alara Vance," I said. "I was in last week regarding my husband's 40th birthday. I know my card was declined, but I've managed to sort out the finances. I'd like to proceed with the booking." The planner was audibly relieved. "Wonderful, Mrs. Vance. So, we'll proceed with the terrace package." "No," I said. I was looking at the data Chloe had extracted from the penthouse hard drives. A list of offshore accounts, feeder cards, and one beautiful, high-limit American Express, registered to Michael Stavros, but tied to a domestic shipping center, I'd like to upgrade to the platinum package, the most expensive one you have. I want the top shelf open bar, the full orchestra, and the premium seafood tower. Everything. Mrs. Vance, that is a significant increase in cost. It's not a problem, I said calmly. I read the 16-digit number of his secret credit card into the phone. I read him the expiration date. There was a pause, just the sound of typing. Thank you, Mrs. Vance, the planner said, his voice suddenly deferential and warm. The deposit has been approved in full. We look forward to hosting Mr. Thorne. I hung up. I had just paid for his execution using his own stolen money. That evening, I set the next piece. I sat Marcus down on our sagging sofa in our house of lies. I manufactured tears, letting my voice crack with a carefully constructed mix of guilt and devotion. Marcus, I said, I did something. For your birthday. He looked up from his laptop, his face settling into its familiar mask of weary concern. Ilara, baby, we can't afford— I know, I interrupted, letting a tear slip. But you've been so down. You've lost everything. You've been so strong for us, and I just wanted to do something to lift your spirits, to show you that we're still us. What did you do? He asked, his tone wary. I called my father. I lied. I asked him for a loan, a big one, enough to throw you the party you deserve. At the Allister, the big one, Marcus, all our friends, your old colleagues. I want them to see that you are not beaten. I want them to celebrate you. His reaction was a masterpiece of con artistry. First, a flash of token anger. Ilara, you shouldn't have. Borrowing money, which quickly melted into a look of overwhelming, humbled gratitude. He pulled me into a hug, his grip tight, burying his face in my hair. You borrowed money. For me, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Ilara, you are too good. Your loyalty. After everything I've put you through, I don't deserve you. I leaned into his embrace, my grandmother's necklace cold beneath my shirt, the hard edges of the diamonds pressing into my skin like a reminder. You deserve the world, Marcus, I whispered back, and I'm going to make sure you get it. He was so moved. The next day, I designed the digital invitations. The theme was a new chapter celebrating Marcus Thorne. The main guest list was easy. Our friends, the ones who had offered us sympathy and casseroles. Our family, including his adoring parents, who were flying in from Florida, bursting with pride for their son who was weathering the storm so bravely. My colleagues from Veridata, including the executive leadership, who believed my husband was a victim of corporate fraud. Then, I crafted the special invitations. The first one went to a private, encrypted email address Chloe had uncovered. Dear Ms. Serafina Reyes, it read, You are cordially invited to a surprise announcement party for Marcus Thorne. As his most valued and secret partner in Ethelred, your presence is essential for the big reveal. Please join Ilara in celebrating the next phase of his success. I made it sound like I was in on the con, a willing, supportive partner, eager to finally meet the other woman. She wouldn't be able to resist. It was a chance to see the fool she was replacing, to witness her final triumph. The second special invitation went to a nondescript public library email address. Dr. Eris Thorne, it read, You are invited to the 40th birthday of Marcus Thorne. You will be seated at the head table as the guest of honor and keynote speaker. It is time for the world to know the true genius behind Evogen. The pieces were moving. The RSVPs flooded in. His parents were ecstatic. Our friends were thrilled. Chloe confirmed, through her own channels, that Serafina had booked a $400 hair and makeup appointment for the afternoon of the party. Eris, now living in a secure hotel room paid for by Mrs. Harding, confirmed his attendance. I had my final meeting with Evelyn Harding. The table in her office was covered in binders, each one a nail for Marcus's coffin. The stage is set, I told her, sipping the tea she'd offered. My team is ready, she replied. She wasn't just a divorce lawyer, she was a predator. We have 2 associates and a forensic accountant who will attend as old friends of your family. They will be observing, and they will be ready to serve the civil summons the moment the presentation ends. And the police? I asked. The district attorney's office is very interested in your evidence of multi-million-dollar wire fraud and the creation of fraudulent federal documents. The Economic Crimes Unit doesn't like being made a fool of. They will have 2 plainclothes officers at the bar, posing as guests. They will not act until you give the signal. Good. Ilara, she said, her voice softening for the first time. Are you sure you want to do it this way? This will be spectacular. It will be public. You can't undo this. I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I thought of the penthouse, silent and smelling of her perfume. I thought of the sonogram. I thought of my grandmother's necklace in her hands. I'm a data analyst, Mrs. Harding, I said. I believe in visualizing the results. He wanted a celebration. I'm just bringing the data to the party. It was 3 a.m, the night before the party. The house was dead silent, tomb-like. Sleep was an impossible concept, a weakness I couldn't afford. I was in my home office, the only light in the room, the cold blue-white glow of my 3 monitors. I was not making a party playlist or a sentimental slideshow. I was a data analyst, and I was building my final report. What I was creating was not a simple presentation. It was a fully interactive, custom-coded data visualization dashboard. I had spent the last 72 hours fueled by black coffee and a pure distilled rage, weaving together every piece of data Eris, Chloe, and I had gathered, the title, centered in a clean corporate font at the top of the screen, read Evogen Investment Analysis from Failure to Profit. It was beautiful. It was the most perfect, most devastating piece of work I had ever created. The first tab was a flow diagram. It began with a small note on the left, labeled Marcus and Ilara Joint Savings. A bright red line snaked out, tracing the flow of our money into a dark hole labeled Fake Evogen Creditor Debts. From there, the line exploded, joined by a massive influx from undisclosed IP sale, and fed into a large, pulsing circle, Ethelred Holdings, Delaware. And from that circle, a single, massive artery tunneled off the screen, ending in a box labeled Cayman Islands Private Accounts. It was simple, elegant, and undeniable. The second tab was a parallel timeline. On the left, a feed populated by Marcus's official calendar. Stressful business trip Boston, meeting with lender Chicago. On the right, a feed from Serafina's private hacked Instagram account. Each entry on the left was time-stamped and matched to an entry on the right. While Marcus was in Boston, Serafina's feed showed a picture of them both, clinking glasses on a beach in Tulum, geotagged and dated. While he was meeting lenders, she had posted a shot of his hand, wearing his signature watch, resting on her bare leg in a first-class airline cabin. The third tab was titled Stolen Assets. It was a simple, stark page. On the left, a high-resolution photograph of my grandmother's necklace, taken from an old family album. On the right, a crystal-clear scan of the fraudulent police report Marcus had filed for the break-in last year. I had even highlighted the line item, 1 antique platinum and diamond necklace. A secure message from Chloe pinged on my private laptop. I'm in. The Alistair's AV network is mine. I control every screen and every speaker in that ballroom. They can play Happy Birthday all they want. When you give the signal, my override will take precedence. They will see exactly what you want them to see. I sent back a single word. Good. I was running a final simulation of the data flow when I heard the floorboard creak in the hallway. The door opened. I didn't jump. My fingers, acting on pure muscle memory, hit a hotkey. The dashboard vanished, replaced instantly by a complex, boring-looking spreadsheet titled Party Budget Final Vendor Payments. Marcus stood in the doorway, his depression robe hanging off him. He squinted in the light from the monitors. "Alara, what are you doing up? It's almost 4. Just triple-checking everything," I murmured, my voice perfectly pitched with wifely exhaustion. "Making sure the payments to the caterer went through. I want it to be perfect for you." He walked in, standing behind me. I could feel his presence, his shadow falling over my shoulder. He looked at the spreadsheet, a jumble of numbers and names. He sighed, a sound of pure, misplaced guilt. "You've done so much," he said, his voice low. He put his hands on my shoulders, and I had to use every ounce of my control not to flinch away from his touch. "Alara, He paused. I waited, my heart a cold stone in my chest. "I have something I need to tell you," he said. I've been wanting to say it for a while." My fingers stopped moving on the keyboard. This was it, the confession. "Let's just get through the party," he continued, his voice heavy. "It's your night, for all your hard work. But after it's all over, we need to talk. About us. About the future." My blood ran cold. He wasn't confessing. He was scheduling it. He was going to let me throw him this massive, expensive party. He was going to stand there, soak up the adoration, the sympathy, the celebration of his resilience. And then, once he was fully lionized, he was going to take me home and dump me, the loyal, stupid wife, right before he and Serafina and their unborn child boarded a flight to Zurich. The arrogance was breathtaking. I turned in my chair, looking up at him. I forced my face into a soft, understanding smile. I reached up and put my hand on his. "Me too, Marcus," I whispered, meeting his gaze. "Me too. I have a big surprise about our future, too, and I can't wait to share it with everyone." The terrace ballroom at the Allister was a sea of noise and shimmering light, packed with everyone we had ever known. The air was thick with the scent of lilies and the sharp brine of the seafood tower I'd ordered. Marcus was magnetic, moving through the crowd, accepting backslaps and sympathetic hugs. His parents, flown in from Florida, watched him with faces shining with pride. His mother was dabbing her eyes, so proud of her son, the man who was weathering the storm with such dignity. He stepped onto the small, warmly lit stage. The orchestra quieted. He grasped the microphone, his face a perfect blend of humility and strength. "Wow," he started, his voice thick with practiced emotion. "Thank you all for being here." He spoke of resilience. He spoke of these hard times and facing the darkness. He talked about hitting rock bottom. Then he turned and looked directly at me, his eyes glistening. "But I could not have gotten through a single day of this without my rock, my absolute rock, my wife, Alara. Thank you, baby," he said, his voice cracking, "for believing in me, unconditionally, when I couldn't even believe in myself." The room erupted in applause. A wave of ahs rippled through the crowd, and right at that moment, as the applause peaked, the grand ballroom doors swung open. Serafina Reyes made her entrance. She was breathtaking, poured into a scarlet dress that clung to every curve. Her red hair was piled high. She was glowing, one hand resting possessively on her stomach, a triumphant smirk on her face. She thought this was her introduction, the moment she would be revealed. Marcus saw her. His smile froze. The blood drained from his face. He stared, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated horror. He knew he'd been set up before he could speak, before he could even breathe. I was moving. I walked onto the stage, took his free hand in mine as if in support, and gently, firmly, lifted the microphone from his paralyzed grasp. "Thank you, Marcus," I said, my voice, amplified, cut through the applause, silencing the room. "You're right. You have taught me so much about unconditional belief. As an analyst, I've always found that belief is so much stronger when it's supported by data. So, in honor of your 40th birthday, I've prepared a small data presentation to celebrate your real achievements. I clicked the remote in my hand. The three massive screens behind the stage, which had been cycling photos of Marcus, flashed black. A second later, they lit up with a clean corporate title, Evogen Investment Analysis, From Failure to Profit. The collective gasp was so loud it was almost a scream. As many of you know, I continued, my voice the calm, measured tone I used in boardroom meetings. Evogen was reported as a catastrophic $30 million failure. I clicked. The data flow chart appeared, but the data shows it was actually a $30 million sale to a shell corporation called Ethelred, which was then immediately funneled to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The silence was absolute. I heard a glass shatter. Marcus's father had dropped his champagne flute, his face chalk white. Marcus worked so hard, traveling constantly. I went on. I clicked to the next tab, the parallel timeline. Here, we see his calendar entry for his stressful business trip to Boston, and here, time-stamped for the same day, is a photo from Serafina Reyes's private Instagram of the two of them in Tulum. A low, vicious murmur began to swell. I clicked again. The stolen assets page, a photo of my grandmother's necklace on the left, the fraudulent police report for our break-in on the right. He even sacrificed family heirlooms, I said. I reached up and touched the heavy diamonds at my own throat. Does this look familiar? Marcus, I found it in your penthouse safe. I looked directly at Serafina, who was frozen by the door. Serafina, you wore it beautifully at the jeweler, but it really belongs in the family. She's insane, Marcus finally roared, lunging for the mic. She's lost her mind. This is slander, Ilara. What are you doing? I stepped back, holding the mic just out of his reach. I didn't analyze this alone. I had help. From the real brain behind Evogen. I gestured to the wings. Our guest of honor, Dr. Eris Thorne. Eris stepped out. He was pale, but his eyes were on fire. He walked straight to Marcus. Brother, Eris said, his voice shaking but loud. You told me my work was worthless. You told me I was a failure. You stole my work. Marcus staggered back, turning from his brother to me, his life imploding in real time. But he's not just a thief. Eris, I said, my voice cold. I clicked to the final tab. A new flowchart appeared. He's not a loyal one, either. The screen showed the Cayman account, and it showed a secret. $10 million transfer out of that account, away from Ethelred, into a private, numbered Swiss account under the name Michael Stavros. Serafina finally moved. The color rushed back into her face in a furious blotch. She was a con artist. She had just been conned by her partner. She stared at Marcus not with hurt, but with pure homicidal rage. Marcus Thorne. A new voice cut through. Two men in neat tuxedos stepped forward from the bar, flashing badges. Mrs. Harding and her team stepped in from the side. You're under arrest for felony wire fraud and conspiracy to defraud. Ms. Reyes, another plainclothes officer said, already moving toward her. You should probably come with us too. Marcus's face collapsed. He turned to me, his hands out. Ilara, no, please, don't do this. They pulled his arms behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I turned to the terrified orchestra leader, who was frozen, his bow in the air. I smiled warmly. I gave him the signal, hesitantly. Then, with confused professionalism, the band began to play Happy Birthday. I stepped off the stage, picking up a fresh flute of champagne. I walked directly up to Marcus as the officers were leading him away. His parents were sobbing. Serafina was shouting at him, calling him every name I had ever known. I stopped them. I stood in front of my husband. I looked him dead in his panicked, shattered eyes. I raised my glass. Happy birthday, Marcus, I said. Make a wish. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm dying to know your thoughts, so please comment below and let me know where you're listening from. I'd love to connect. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it extra support by hitting that hype button. It helps get these stories heard by so many more people.